Building a great B2B go-to-market engine starts with understanding what works and evolving it. I'm your host, Rob Karel, and this is a go-to-market perspective, where marketing and sales leaders share how they're transforming their organizations, foundational best practices, smart trade-offs, and practical AI delivering value and scale today. Product marketing continues to be one of the most overloaded and inconsistently defined roles in B2B tech. Are they launch managers, messaging gurus, sales enablement content producers, go-to-market strategists, all or none of the above? I'm excited to welcome my guest today, Beth Barach, VP of Product Marketing at Brinqa, who will help founders, marketing and product leaders define what they need from their product marketing team, how to set them up for success. Beth, welcome.
Hey, Rob, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and get the opportunity to talk about my favorite topic, product marketing. I am currently the VP of product marketing at a company called Brinqa, and I've been in this space for quite a long time. And my background is mostly in tech, and for the last very long time, I would say 10 or 15 years, all in cybersecurity.
I hear that's a pretty hot up and coming space. There might be a future in cybersecurity.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride watching it evolve as a discipline over the last, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about the product marketing topic as well. And really, our title of this episode was about so much responsibility, so little authority. And we're going to walk through kind of what does that mean? How is it maybe a little different than a traditional demand gen leader or someone else? Why does product marketing have this unique complexity that doesn't seem to exist in a lot of other roles? Why don't we start for the uninitiated, for the folks that maybe don't have as much experience working with or in a product marketing role? Can you give us that product marketing 101? What are the typical product marketing responsibilities, and why do you think there's so much confusion?
I think that's a great point that product marketing is a very different discipline than I think any other marketing discipline. I think the reason why is because there's product right in the title. So are you a product person? Are you a marketing person? And I would say yes, right? I think that's the most complex part, is that you actually are both of those roles. I think that it is a discipline. It is a complex discipline. My experience has all been in tech. So I think for me, I'll speak to that more so. I think maybe in other product marketers who maybe don't work in a technical field, the answer may be a little bit different. Like say if they're in, a healthcare space or some other, like maybe a B2C kind of space, your product marketing responsibilities and ownership might be a little bit different. I think what's really key in a technical field like cybersecurity, product marketing is challenging because you need to really know enough to be dangerous, as I say, right? So it's your key job as a product marketer is to translate the technical value into the business value. So your job is to really sit between engineering and product and sales and marketing and customer and be that two-way translator. And I think that's also why product marketing is very misunderstood, because it's not a marketing discipline like, say, demand gen or ops or things like that. It's very connected to the product being built.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good clarification that B2B technology, whether it's infrastructure or software, whatever layer, heavily dependent on the technology as part of the message. And I think that's the key. I don't want to necessarily go through a laundry list. And I kind of, in my intro, I kind of hinted at some of the responsibilities. But why don't we start with Brinqa in terms of what your product marketing team is responsible for, the different sub-disciplines, if you will. And then let's also expand it to what other roles that product marketers across B2B are also expected to do, whether they're doing it at Brinqa or not. But we've both been in enough organizations that have had enough variety. I'm really curious to hear your kind of summary.
Yeah, that's a good point, Rob. I think that no matter where you are, what size company you are, any role I've been in, the key ownership of product marketing is you own the messaging and positioning. And so I think that's true whatever size company you're in, whatever kind of company, size of company you're in, you own the messaging and positioning, and that's where everything cascades from there. So if sometimes you'll like here, I actually own analyst relations as well. But again, the core of that is the messaging and positioning. You probably will own a lot of the content development and creation. I have a great, fantastic team of demand gen and content people that I work with here. But again, they're looking to me to understand how to interpret that core message and position. Things like crafting personas, developing launch strategy and planning and execution, those kinds of things, all of them start with building the right message, position, persona. And I think another key piece of what that means is figuring out how to stand out, and not so much in a creative way like your content or demand or events or social people do, but stand out in when someone hears what you're saying about your product, that it is a different message than what your competitors are saying or anything else anybody is saying. And I think that's the most difficult part of being a product marketer.
That's a really good point. And I think, I'm gonna raise something which has been a conversation often in the product marketing circles around what's the number one way of describing a product marketer's role. And very often you hear the term go-to-market strategist around strategy, whereas all the other adjacent partner teams like demand gen and events and comms are really on execution. Product marketing is defined who we're targeting, what are the key messages that are going to resonate, and then they are the ones that are responsible for actually putting that message out to market and driving results, which I think is going to be where some of our conversation regarding authority and accountability come down, because you own the upstream foundation setting, but you don't necessarily own the downstream metric.
Yeah, absolutely, right? KPIs for product marketing, I think, are some of those are the most popular questions I get from other product marketers, right? What are the metrics that you measure? What are your KPIs? And I think also another big product marketing is that go-to-market enablement. But to your point, I think go-to-market strategy or go-to-market, what does that really mean? And I
Mhm.
think, it means something different to a lot of different people. To me, what go to market means is as a product marketer, again, it's all based on the message and the position. And for you to be able to receive it and also continuously evolve it and make sure that you're sending that message out on the right channel. So to me, what that, go to market strategy is I need to understand what is the product roadmap strategy from our CTO, from our head of engineering, from our head of product management. But I also need to think about what are our competitors doing? What are their go-to-market motions? How do we match those? Customers, what are their strategy? What's their how are they receiving what we're building? What are the strategy and execution and projects that they have in place? And how can our product help further their goals and their, the things they're trying to do in their environment? So I think go-to-market strategy sometimes gets short shrift, I guess. And it's like, oh, it's just sales enablement and teaching the salespeople, the value of the product, right? I think it's a much more holistic thing. And it's kind of the convergence about all these other stakeholders and their go to market strategies and understanding how to synthesize and consolidate all of that information and still be able to communicate on all of the channels in the way that is meaningful to those stakeholders that you have.
Let's talk about the product and marketing relationship. And one of the things you talked about, what's on the roadmap and how do we launch these capabilities in a differentiated, unique way that's going to be valuable to our ICP. That's great. That's kind of like, we'll call it outbound product marketing, the get that message out. What I've experienced with a number of organizations is sometimes product marketers are limited to outbound. We're going to
Yes.
tell you what we've built, and you then have to figure out how to message it and convince everyone it's important, whether you agree or not, to get this message out to the market. Versus the best product marketing organizations that I've experienced the product marketers have both inbound and outbound roles. The inbound role, to your point, is doing that competitive intelligence, that voice of the customer, the market analysis, and bringing that to the product team. So as they're building out their product strategy and roadmap, the product marketers got a seat at the table. They're actually helping evolve and influence. Of course, they don't have ownership of the product roadmap. That's the product organization, but they're part of the cross-functional collaborative team that's defining the roadmap. Where do things sit in your experience?
I totally agree, Rob. And I think I'm fortunate here at Brinqa because we're a small but mighty organization. And so, and also a very, very much a collaborative organization. I think that so much of that depends on people not only understanding the value of product marketing, which I'm really fortunate that people do here, but also understanding the value of that collaboration. And I tend to, it's interesting because I think a lot of people think, oh, that's something that happens based on the size of your organization. And I can tell you that I've worked at, multi-billion dollar corporations on a product line where we were absolutely firing on all cylinders and I had all of that flywheel happening. I've worked at really small organizations where that flywheel has been happening. And then I've worked at large and small organizations where either there was not that openness and trust between the teams or value of what product marketing does. So those things were not as available to me as a product marketer, right? That inbound and outbound, that seeing that whole 360 view of things was not available to me. And I agree that I think it makes your job as a product marketer more challenging, and it limits you, right? It limits your, because you're getting limited information in, so your ability to really see around corners is really hampered.
Absolutely. And, we both have had both positive and negative experiences across the spectrum. And it just shows that there's not a lot of consistency in how these things are being managed. These teams are being managed across B2B. So I'm going to have some fun now, kick off a little controversy because this is one of those most common questions as product marketing teams are being really built out at, small and scaling tech companies. Who should own product marketing?
Mm-hmm.
Is, as you said, it's this bridge between product and marketing. So I've worked for organizations where product marketing is reported up through the chief product officer. I've worked where it's rolled up through the chief marketing officer, and there are those out there that report into completely other
Yeah.
parts of the org. I'm curious, what is your take? If you had your druthers and could just say this is where product marketing should always live.
Yeah, I think I have rolled into CPOs and I have rolled into CMOs. It should be in one of those orgs, 100%. And I think I've had pluses and minuses experiences in both. I think what's challenging, there's challenges to both those org structures. I think sometimes the challenge in rolling into the CPO is that you are very cut off from the budget you need or the people you need or the relationships you need to build with sales and marketing. And that can be really challenging, where you end up almost in a technical enablement role or a technical marketing role. And not that those things aren't needed, but you almost get cut off from the go-to-market side of the business. And I think that's hard because your job as a product marketer is to help drive revenue and help a product adoption and help product sales. So if you're only in the building part of it, that can be really challenging. But on the other hand, I also think that sometimes when you're on the CMO, this marketing side of the business, sometimes you're not really well understood as to your value. Sometimes you're seen as just a content person. Sometimes you are challenged to build those technical relationships with engineering or product management because you're seen as a quote marketer and a content creator. And so sometimes your deep grounding and understanding of the product is lacking.
Mhm.
because you haven't had that ability to really sit down with the people building it to get a true, deeper understanding of what it is. I think I prefer to be in the marketing org because I really like technical people and I really like engineers and I really like product builders. And so I find building that bridge not as hard. I think when you are put in the technical bucket, I think that it's harder to build a bridge. For me, it's harder to build a bridge to marketing people because you're seen as a technical person. I joke around that the highest compliment I get from engineers is when someone tells me I'm all right for a marketing person.
There is no higher compliment. Congratulations on that. I think you need a T-shirt.
I'm okay for a marketing person. Yeah. But I do think, I think some product marketers too, they just feel more comfortable in a marketing org because they also may have come from a content background or something like that. For me, my background started in the channel, and then I went and built channel partner programs and technology partner programs. So I think for me, that also is helpful for me in getting credibility with technical people because I built technology partner programs. So I think when I tell technical people that, that already gives me some more credibility than say if I came out of a content or demand gen or place like that. So I think that's part of it too, right? What your background is, where you're more effective or where you sit.
I think you bring up a really important point for any product marketer or product marketing leader that's facing some of these challenges or this real or perceived lack of feeling of empowerment. Credibility earning is a part of being a product marketer. You don't just walk in day one and have credibility on either side. Because you're in
Absolutely.
this bridge, you got to earn technical credibility with the engineering and product folks. You also got to earn campaign strategy credibility with your execution folks on marketing. And if you are too heavily weighted on one side or another, it's going to be a lot of work bridge building. So it is a really, a fine a line that you have to walk. And so I think it's a really good point. I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we continue because I definitely see this as a theme that we need to.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And I also feel like, I talk about a lot about communicating on different channels, right? So I think part of that too is understanding the channel you're communicating on. As a product marketer, I think it's really important. You may be conveying the same message to different people. So the way you convey that message, it just has to be grounded in what is this person I'm talking to? I always say, what's on their piece of paper, right? Meaning, like, what is it that they care about? So you as a product marketer may need to get something done or have something to accomplish or educate or inform somebody about something, but you have to channel it through the lens of what does this other person think is important? Because if you don't tailor your message to that, it's probably not going to be effective and land effectively.
And ironically, product marketers in general are really good at doing this for external messaging. They know how to talk to this is the value prop for a C level versus a developer versus a buyer or a project manager. But leveraging that skill internally for building relationships, you got to use those same skills.
Absolutely.
Let's go into the crux. We obviously, when we agreed on the title for this episode, we decided to throw down the gauntlet and make this statement that there is an actual stress out there for product marketers, that they're feeling that they are so overloaded with responsibility, but they're feeling such a lack of empowerment.
Hmm.
They're not feeling like they have the authority to make things happen. So let's just at the highest level, let's start there. Why do you think that is? Why is there this such a consistent feeling of overwork, underappreciated, overworked, don't have the ability to actually influence change?
I think it's because product marketing is such a squishy discipline. I will say, I think, when you ask somebody what is product marketing, the response is, I know it when I see it, right? I know good product marketing when I see it, or what. And so I think when you yourself work in a discipline that is so dependent on how other people define you, that means that you almost have to give your power away in a little. I know that sounds odd, but I think you kind of do have to, you are giving your power away because there is not like a demand or social or brand or right. There's not like oh, okay, you can measure share of voice in product marketing, or you can measure MQL, SQL in product marketing. I think, when product marketing is done right, it means that you're shortening the sales cycle, right? Because it means that people understand who you are, what you do. Your prospect is actually coming to you for what they need, and you are being very clear that you have. That is such a difficult thing to measure. And
Mhm.
it also, I think product marketers feel like they're almost the invisible force behind a lot of things that are coming to be in the market. I think the reason why a lot of times we feel like we have all of the responsibility, none of the authority, is because our job is only successful when we get everybody else to do theirs well. That's really it's complicated.
It's spot on because accelerating the sales cycle, improving win-loss rates, getting better dot placement in the analyst reports, increasing pipeline, improving the qualification of pipe into leads and opportunities. Product marketing plays a role in supporting all of those processes, but does not own a single one of those metrics.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that I think that's a really good point of this. This is, I think, where that critical discipline, lack of ownership lives.
Yeah.
Let's get into the recommendation stages. Like when we're actually talking to founders or leaders, whether they're on the product marketing side, CEO, let's talk about the different product marketing investments you need to make at different stages of a
Mm,
company. Because you've worked for companies at the really early
yeah.
stages, startups, they're just building out their first marketers, to growth stage where they're actually beginning to scale, as well as the large enterprise where they have really mature disciplines and processes. So let's start with that. Like we're now talking to that early stage founder that's built a cool product. They're kind of just figuring out product market fit. And they say, you know what? It's time for us to invest in a product marketer. Why are they saying that?
That's a great point, Robin. I had the opportunity to lead a workshop for some very, very, very early stage companies a few months ago. And what was interesting to me was the first marketing hire. To me, this is the hot debate, right? Who is your first marketing hire? And for them, the answer was a growth marketer. And I pressure tested that statement to say, what is your growth marketer going to say?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, how is that growth marketer going to build campaigns? How is that growth marketer going to create messages? How is that growth marketer? And the answer was, well, I'm the founder. I know exactly how to position my company. And I found that really interesting because to me, taking that message directly from how the founder positions the company to raise capital or get a first customer is not necessarily what a growth marketer should use to drive demand, right? And I feel like that is the gap where a first product marketer comes in, right? To me, that first product marketer should come in and take that investor pitch deck and take all the things that that founder is using and run it through the lens of, well, who are our competitors and who are our customers and who's our ICP and how can we sound different and what does the market really need, right? And then how do I create that single source of truth for that growth marketer to then take and make meaningful web pages and make meaningful campaigns, right? Make meaningful social campaigns and things like that. And I feel like that step for early stage founders a lot of times is missed because they think that what they've created for that's gotten them their first round of capital or gotten that first handful of customers is I'm just going to hand it over to the growth folks and that's good enough.
I've seen that time and time again where there are different, we just mentioned this, different messages for different audiences. And what excites an investor is how the business can grow and how they can make money. What excites a potential prospect or customer, they don't care. They want you to be viable and that you're not going to go out of business, but how are you going to help me?
Right.
Right. I don't care about your growth plans. And not that any founder is going to go to a customer and tell them how wonderful their company is in terms of ability to make money. But there is this assumption that just because a CEO says something doesn't mean a digital campaign or an email saying the same thing is going to be read.
Yes, right. And also to getting back to that inside out versus outside in, right? I feel like a lot of early stage content is inside out. We're so great. Here's what we do. And there's absolutely a need for that. But I think that big shift from once you're actually going to market, you need to reverse that and start with the outside in. What problems are we solving? What do customers need? How are we different? And I feel I've seen this so many times in early stage places where I've worked, where someone has said to me, okay, here's the pitch deck, fix it. Right.
Mhm.
And the first slide, even in later stage companies, right, that have been around a while, the first slide is always, here is how great we are.
Right. About us.
And it always makes me laugh because I could set my watch by it, Rob. I mean, I feel like that's always the case. And then when I say to people, if you're buying something, do you ever want someone to come up to you and say, let me tell you how great this product is that you're buying? That's not why we buy things,
Mhm.
right? It's either an emotional connection or I'm solving a problem or I have a need or and it's funny to me how that always goes out the window immediately, where people don't make that connection of that is why people buy or connect to the whatever you're selling. It's not because you've told them how great you are. It's because you're solving a problem.
And to your point, I've spoken with a lot of founders whose first marketing hire was a growth hire, and their second marketing hire was replacing them with a product marketing background because they learned the hard way
Yeah.
that their message isn't resonating and they're not differentiated and they're not able to break through the noise. And the person they hired, that wasn't their expertise.
Sure, right. Because that's not what growth marketers do, right? I also see, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about product marketing and what a product marketer does. I know we've talked about a little bit about that beginning, but I think I see more what I call kitchen sink job descriptions,
Mhm.
right? And it was funny because I saw a LinkedIn post today about someone griping about how they couldn't find a product marketer, and they specifically outlined what they thought a product marketer should do, which is a lot of what we're talking about. But they were getting people who were content people, people who were digital people, right? And I think there's also a misconception that someone who's a great growth marketer can also do product marketing. Like, right. And yeah, the yes and job description, right? It's like the 45 things I want this person to do. But the truth is that those are growth marketers who are great at what they do, are really great at what they do. That's not my discipline, but that too is a discipline. And I think having that kitchen sink job description, to your point, you're not going to get a great product marketer if you've brought in a great growth marketer.
So let's actually talk about, you're no longer on early stage, you're now at a growth scaling company and an enterprise. And I could predict what you're going to say is that we're going to start seeing more specialization as you grow. Is that a fair guess?
Yes. I mean, I think also as you grow, there's more to do, right? You might have more products too. You
Mhm.
might have to have more of a customer focus on expansion because you've landed and now you have what more are you going to sell that customer? What more features are you going to have them turn on? And how are you going to market those to that customer? So I think there's also, everything from once you've gotten that messaging and positioning down, it's how are you going to get customers to grow with you? So it kind of starts to incorporate a little bit of customer marketing in addition to that prospect focus that you have with sellers, right? You also are probably going to start enabling your customer success team.
So let's switch gears and talk about where are there product marketing breakdowns? There's obviously a stress point that we're talking about in this episode around product marketing is feeling overwhelmed and under empowered, et cetera. So where have you seen, do you have an example in your experience of just like a real breakdown that's taken place because of this lack of authority and ability to truly influence?
Yeah, I think also so much of that comes from trust.
Mhm.
So I think that the reason why things break down is trust and also setting the tone and setting the stage. So one thing that I've seen a lot is particularly in launch, right? You have these product marketers are own a launch. A lot of times they're the project manager and leader of the launch. And a lot of times I see where things break down is that they assemble a launch call, invite people to it, and expect everyone to be comfortable being forthcoming about what's really happening in a large cross-functional team meeting.
Mhm.
And I think that's a definite place where things break down because there are always people that do not want to share what might really be happening, particularly if things are going sideways
Mhm.
in front of others. Right. And so I've seen things break down where everything is going along swimmingly, or everyone thinks everything is going along swimmingly, and we're having launch calls and the launch is progressing forward. But the truth is maybe the product is really not ready.
Mhm.
That is a massive breakdown of, okay, we've launched the product, but it actually is, 3 months behind or 6 months behind. Or there's a giant showstopper that means we have to show demos at an event we're going to when we can't because we didn't even build that phase of the product yet. And nobody knows about it because nobody is willing to say something in a meeting it contains a whole group of people.
Yeah, and I've been there, and it's like, what does that do? It breaks down trust with sales, who has now been told they should start selling this, and then things start breaking. Customers are unhappy, and then it's the boy who cried wolf. I don't believe what you're going to say the next time. I don't believe it's going to be ready. I'm not going to sell the new thing until I
Right.
have proof that I can trust it. So obviously, a big part of that I think is the culture of the organization. Like, are you allowed to express things are going sideways without being shamed or let there being repercussions versus no, we want you to share this. This is valuable.
Yes, I think also too, I always talk about the naysayer. So,
Mhm.
I know, Rob, you've experienced this, right? There's always a person in the group in that launch call that is the naysayer of, well, this will never happen, or I can't do this, or you're being unreasonable, or whatever. And I think, that lack of trust, the naysaying, the not really being emotionally honest, if you will, with like what's really happening. I also think, unfortunately, a lot of times that onus is on the product marketer to have a one on one with
Mhm.
those people that they know are either maybe they don't feel like they're comfortable forthcoming in that group conversation, or maybe they are the naysayer and they need to manage that naysayer before the group conversation happens, right?
Mhm.
So, one thing that I do that I think works really well is I will have a launch stand up call. So I'm not a fan of hour long readouts with
Mhm.
everybody, saying how things are going. My thing is if things are not going well, tell me in the stand up, and then I will let's have a smaller conversation or a one-on-one conversation about how to resolve that sticking point. I think that just it makes people feel more confident to tell you there's an issue when it's only you they're talking to.
Sometimes you call it the call before the call,
Yes.
which is, as a product marketer who already has way too much on their plate, it's a extra responsibility and could be even a burden, but it really greases the skids, so to speak, to make the cross-functional effort move forward by proactively identifying those potential roadblocks and trying to mitigate it.
Yes, and I think too, the onus is on the product marketer to you should be having one-on-one conversations about why a launch is important, what a launch is, What does it mean to this person you're talking to? What are the expectations you have of this person you're talking to? Because I think really outlining what your expectations are and why you want them to be involved and what you want them to do, and ideally in a large organization, getting their managers' buy-in is critical. Because I think people, particularly in very large, complex organizations, focus on what their leaders think is important.
Hmm.
And so being able to have your leader influence the leaders of those people that you need to get them to say, hey, this is important. You need to be in these meetings. You need to be forthcoming. It's okay to share what's really going on. I think that's another thing I've learned over the years that really has helped a lot. If you're in the organization and you report to the CMO, saying to the CMO, hey, on the next ELT, I really need your help with these are the directs, the peers of mine I need in these launch calls. I need your help influencing their leadership people when you are in these leadership calls to explain a launch is coming up and here's why you're going to need to have your people participate authentically. I think that goes a really long way. So, understanding how to manage up of your own executive and then having to get them to plant that seed with their peers is really, really critical.
That's great advice. Managing up is an important skill, and 9 out of 10 of your CXO leaders expect you to manage up. They're not going to just assume they know what you need. You need to tell them what you need, and they'll do it
Yes.
most of the time. I think there's the woe is me aspect of some product marketers saying I don't have any authority, and then there's of course the reality when talking about decision making authority, not just product marketing, but in general. Where's the balance and best practices for like leadership granting authority? You have to listen to what Beth says versus just the product marketing leader actually demonstrating value and earning the ability to influence and owning decisions. Where do you stand there?
That's such a challenging question, Rob, because I think that I don't know that, I mean, unless you have directs, who really has to do what you say? Even then, it's like you don't want to be a leader that is, or I don't want to be a leader. I'm not a leader that's very top down. That's kind of not my style.
Mhm.
And so maybe that's helped me in being in a product marketing role. I'm much more of a collaborative leader. So I think that helps me lead in these very ambiguous situations. And I always, to your point about, why should I listen to you is sort of, I think, the question you're asking, right? I think for me, it's tailoring the channel of the person I'm talking to with their KPIs and goals and what do they want to accomplish in mind, and aligning my expertise and my background and also my deliverables to them. So, what I mean by that is, for example, if I'm talking to the sales leader about something, I'm going to frame it in the lens of how I can help shrink the sales cycle, how I can help accelerate pipeline, how I can make their salespeople more effective at discovery calls, right? Things like that. Whereas if I'm talking to a product leader, I would frame the conversation more in a way of particularly talking about my technological partnership building expertise. I understand that you have features that you have to think about. I know you have a feature list. I know you have 500 JIRA tickets and you're managing which things make it into this launch. My job is to help you when you decide what those things are, make them the strongest, most compelling things and turn those into a reason to buy, to make that product make revenue and to fulfill those revenue tags that you've tagged to what these features will deliver. So again, it's to me that's the exact same conversation, but it's on two very different channels,
Mhm.
right? And in talking about what's in it for you, instead of I need you to do this or I need to do this, it's more about I understand what it is you need to do. Here is how what I'm doing will help further your goals. That is the key, I think, to effective communication, right? Listening to understand, really knowing your audience, and then tailoring what you're talking about to something that resonates with them.
Great advice. As we're kind of wrapping up a bit, I want to ask you another controversial, fun question. And that goes to, as you're building out your product marketing team and looking for the right skills, how do you balance and what do you feel is more important? Actual depth of product marketing experience, proven ability to create compelling, differentiated messaging and position, be able to manage a complex launch management process cross functionally, deliver competitive intelligence, enablement, et cetera, or the depth of industry or technology segment experience, which I know, like, especially in cybersecurity,
Mhm.
is
Yeah, that's a
incredibly valued. So, how do you balance that? Because you may not get both.
I think it's rare. So I think that what's interesting, particularly in cybersecurity, is you might find someone who has a depth of experience in a technological discipline of cybersecurity, but there are so many that you can't possibly find someone sometimes who has the deep expertise and the deep product marketing expertise for your specific product set, right? I think that's challenging. And I think that's a tough question. And it's funny that you raised this because I actually had a great person who worked for me who was an experienced product marketer in a completely different industry to cybersecurity.
Mhm.
It was great because this person had amazing product marketing instincts and knowledge and background and all the things. And to teach them about our product and about cybersecurity, I just set up all these one on ones with all these very experienced people in the business, the sales engineers, the product developers, the product management team. And I just had this person almost like go to cybersecurity product school in a way, because that's something I think that can work. But I think the flip side can work too. I had a person who was an SE who I retrained to become my technical product marketer. So he was fantastic at translating technical concepts and doing demos and talking about the product and things like that. But the concept of product marketing was completely foreign,
Mhm.
right? And so for him, I ended up sending him to pragmatic training. He got a really good grounding of, how do product management and product marketing work together and what even is this thing we call product marketing?
I have a similar opinion, and it's like right now it's a buyer's market. There's a lot more really talented product marketers across all disciplines than there are jobs, unfortunately. But that gives companies the ability to maybe find that unicorn, where a
Yeah,
couple of years ago that was really hard. But net, if I had to choose, I think it's a lot harder to teach people how to do product marketing than it is to learn a space.
yeah,
I was a first year analyst. I had to learn spaces and new technologies like every couple of months, and it's a lot of work. But you have all this documentation, you have all these experts within your company, you've got all this enablement. You already have that university training for your market and your product. But what do you have to teach someone how to create compelling positioning or to
yeah.
how to manage a complex launch process? So for me, if you have to prioritize, it's go for the depth of product marketing experience, learn the market, but I don't think that's a challenge right now because I think those buyers, those companies are getting the best of both worlds because there's a lot of talented people on the market right now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I know one thing we didn't touch on, which I think is something we should chat about, is AI, Rob. So,
The AI skills needed. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
yeah, I think the one thing I will say I feel like AI has really changed the game for is competitive analysis.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not going to lie, I love the little GPT I built to help me do competitive analysis because I think we as product marketers used to spend so many hours triangulating so many different data sources about our competitors and what they were doing. And I think AI is a fantastic way to stay on top of the competition.
The one that I've been hearing a lot of folks just loving is Notebook LM, where they're bringing all of this information and training this and just being able to ask it any questions regarding the competition. And of course, folks are building agents to continue to crawl and find any new announcements or updates. So yeah, 100%. Well, Beth, thank you so much. This was such a fun conversation. I think, our takeaway is product marketers, stop looking for authority and just up your influence game, because
Yes.
that's what we do. Is we are influencing so many parts of the organization. One of the coolest jobs in B2B. And don't worry about the ROI and the metrics. It's all about your influence, and you could just take credit for everyone else's success. And that's always been fun. Beth, thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks for having me, Rob. This has been really fun.
Take care.